World War II was one of the most devastating conflicts in human history, and the defeat of Nazi Germany remains one of its most significant turning points. But why, exactly, did Germany lose? At the height of its power in the early 1940s, Nazi Germany appeared unstoppable, conquering much of Europe in a matter of months. Yet just a few years later, the Third Reich was in ruins, Berlin lay in rubble, and Adolf Hitler was dead. The reasons for Germany's defeat are numerous, complex, and interconnected, involving military strategy, political decisions, economic limitations, and the overwhelming force of the Allied response. To understand Germany's downfall, we must begin with its initial success. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland using a revolutionary tactic known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. This strategy emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming force, allowing German tanks and aircraft to break enemy lines quickly and prevent effective resistance. Poland fell in weeks, followed by Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France in 1940. Hitler's military seemed invincible. However, Blitzkrieg had one major weakness: it depended heavily on quick victories and short supply lines. As Germany expanded, it stretched itself thin, exposing logistical vulnerabilities that would later prove fatal. Another critical factor was Hitler's decision-making. While he was initially cautious and calculated, success made him overconfident. He began to ignore his experienced generals and made catastrophic strategic errors. One of the most consequential was the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, known as Operation Barbarossa. Hitler believed the campaign would last only a few months. Instead, it turned into a brutal, multi-year conflict on a massive front stretching over 1,000 miles. Germany's forces were unprepared for the harsh Russian winter, their supply lines became overextended, and the Soviets proved far more resilient than anticipated. The Battle of Stalingrad, in particular, was a turning point. The German Sixth Army was encircled and ultimately destroyed. This was the first major defeat of the war and shattered the myth of German invincibility. Germany also faced significant economic disadvantages. Unlike the Allies, Germany lacked access to vast natural resources. The British Empire and the United States had access to global trade networks, oil supplies, and industrial capacity far beyond what Germany could muster. Hitler attempted to solve this through conquest, but occupying and exploiting territories like Ukraine and France proved difficult and costly. In contrast, American industry became the arsenal of democracy, producing tanks, ships, aircraft, and weapons at an unprecedented scale. By 1944, the United States was producing more war material than all Axis powers combined. This industrial imbalance meant Germany simply couldn't replace its losses as quickly as the Allies could. Air superiority also played a major role. Early in the war, the German Luftwaffe dominated the skies over Europe. But as the war progressed, Allied air power grew stronger. Strategic bombing campaigns devastated German cities and industrial centers, crippling production and lowering civilian morale. The British Royal Air Force and the United States Army Air Forces relentlessly bombed factories, railways, and oil refineries. Germany's ability to fuel its war machine diminished significantly. Meanwhile, German aircraft production and pilot training couldn't keep up with losses, resulting in declining air defense and battlefield support. The opening of multiple fronts further strained Germany's military. After the failed invasion of Britain and the quagmire in the Soviet Union, Hitler made another grave mistake by declaring war on the United States in December 1941, following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This brought the world's most powerful industrial nation directly into the European conflict. With the US involved, Germany now faced enemies in the east, west, north, and south. In 1943, the Allies invaded Italy, forcing Germany to divert troops to southern Europe. In 1944, the D-Day landings in Normandy opened a massive Western front. Germany was now fighting a two-front war against superpowers with superior numbers, equipment, and coordination. Its armies were stretched beyond capacity. Resistance movements and intelligence efforts also undermined the Nazi war effort. Throughout occupied Europe, local resistance groups sabotaged German operations and gathered intelligence for the Allies. The British cracked the German Enigma code, giving the Allies crucial insight into German plans and troop movements. This gave the Allies a consistent strategic edge in both European and Atlantic theaters. Hitler's inner circle, meanwhile, was plagued by paranoia and internal rivalry, leading to poor coordination and inefficient command structures. Another key reason Germany lost was its ideological extremism. Nazi ideology prioritized racial purity and authoritarian control over military efficiency. Hitler's obsession with exterminating Jews, Slavs, and other groups not only fueled the Holocaust but also diverted resources, manpower, and focus from the war effort. Millions of people who could have contributed to the German war machine were instead enslaved, imprisoned, or killed. This also stiffened the resolve of nations around the world to defeat the Nazi regime, uniting diverse countries with very different interests in a common goal: the total defeat of Hitler. Finally, German morale eroded over time. As losses mounted, cities were destroyed by bombings, and the horrors of war became unavoidable. German soldiers and civilians alike began to lose faith. Desperation set in. The once glorified Nazi cause collapsed under the weight of its own brutality and arrogance. By early 1945, Soviet troops were pushing into Eastern Europe and closing in on Berlin. American, British, and French forces were moving in from the west. The final days of the war saw fierce fighting in the German capital, but it was clear the end was inevitable. In summary, Germany lost World War II because it underestimated its enemies, overextended its resources, mismanaged its strategic decisions, and placed ideology above logic. The combination of Soviet resilience, Allied industrial power, strategic bombing, multi-front pressure, and internal dysfunction all led to the downfall of one of history's most dangerous regimes. While the early victories of Nazi Germany stunned the world, its defeat was the result of its own overreach and the collective strength of nations determined to stop it.